Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Perspective. And your hosts for the evening are Brian and Laura. Laura,
Hello.
it's your first time, isn't it?
It is.
Ooh, are you excited?
I am very excited. Yeah.
I hope so. Thanks for doing this.
Oh, anytime. Yeah.
So I would normally want to give you a little bit longer of an intro, but we've got a bunch of callers that we need to dive
A
into.
lot.
However, if you could, just give a brief background about yourself.
Okay, awesome. So really quickly, I just started a few months ago with Unapologetically Me on YouTube. And now I've recently started a podcast called Skeptic Hangout. So I'm kind of working on both of those right now. And I'm doing lots and lots of stuff like this, popping onto people's shows and running my mouth.
It's fun, isn't it?
I love it.
Brian, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing just fine. Always excited to come back on the perspective and take some calls. Yeah, let's dive in. I'm ready to go.
Before we dive in, anyone watching, just know we tackle supernatural and paranormal claims, belief in aliens, conspiracy theories, and even political claims. We'll take anything and apply a skeptic's lens to it. So call the number at the bottom of the screen, 951-364-2430. But we're going to jump to our first caller. Bo wants to talk about why he believes in God. Bo, you're on with Brian and Laura.
Hello,
Hey.
Bo. How are you? Are you there? Brian, do you hear Bo?
Crap. Say that again. They couldn't.
Oh, Bo,
Bo,
can you
are
hear
you
us?
with us?
I can hear you guys. Hopefully you can hear me.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
we
we can
couldn't
hear
at
you.
first, but we can hear you now. Yeah.
Great. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. What have you
Yeah.
got for us tonight?
So somebody came on a Facebook group that I belong to and asked if any Christians would be interested in coming on the show. So here I am, I guess. We never really discussed the topic, but I guess we'd want to
Fantastic.
talk about God.
Oh, you just
About
cut out a
God?
little bit. But yeah, it sounds like you want to talk about why you believe in God.
So I'm going to try something else with my audio here.
Okay.
Hopefully
Yeah, it
that'll
sounds
work
like
a
it's
little bit
cutting in
better.
and out just a little bit. But yeah, so while you're doing that, since you said you don't know a lot about this show, we really just sit around and discuss any kind of supernatural claim. And we discuss how we would look at it from sort of a skeptical perspective, how you would test what claims are true or not, or how you can determine that. So really anything you bring to the table, we're interested in hearing about and talking about.
Well, very cool.
Ooh, and it sounds like we have you without it going in
So
and out.
I guess,
so.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. We're listening. All ears.
Okay. So I guess where I would start with the existence of God from a supernatural point, I base my belief on science, laws of physics. I also base it on information and information not being physical. As far as physics and everything like that go, I would say the only three explanations I can come up with for a universe even existing would be A, the universe has always been here, the universe created itself out of nothing, or a supernatural creator brought it into existence. And I think the first two fail based on the laws of physics. I guess
So
that
are
would be my
you-
initial comment.
Which laws of physics are we looking at? Did it fail? Did you
Which
say
laws of physics?
Yeah.
Well, we could look at the first two laws of thermodynamics.
Mhm.
We could look at entropy. We can look at matter and energy not being able to create itself out of nothing.
Okay. Entropy. I like the topic of entropy. For the listeners here, can you just define entropy for me?
I guess at a very, I'm not a physicist, but at a basic level, I would say things tend to break down. Fuel expends its available energy, that sort of thing.
Okay. And
for the universe to be eternal, I believe it would be cold and dead by now. I don't believe we would still have fires burning. And that's why I say the universe cannot be eternal.
okay.
Okay, so I want to jump in really quick with that and
ahead.
ask a question if that's okay. Yeah. So you said there were 3 different reasons that you can think of for the universe to have come into existence. Do you think that it's possible there's any more reasons, or are those just like, are they the only 3 you can think of, or are they the only 3 that you think are possible?
Well, if anybody could come up with a fourth, I would be all ears, and I would love to hear that. I've been asking this question for quite a long time, and I've never heard a fourth option that was valid. But yeah, if you could come up with one, I'd be more than willing to listen to that.
Yeah, and just real quick, I don't think that either one of us are like physicists or are specifically geared towards answering that level of questioning, but I have heard multiple answers that are beyond just those 3. But my question is, like, we don't know much about the beginnings of the universe other than what we can kind of hypothesize mathematically. So I'm wondering how you come to those conclusions that those are the only 3.
And even mathematically, we just go back so far to where what they call the singularity is so far that is our models, what we have as our understanding of the laws of physics kind of break down at that point. But that's not to say that's the beginning of the universe, but anything that happens before that's speculative, including what kind of physical laws were in place, including laws like what you're talking about, entropy and things like that. We can't speculate about anything beyond that point scientifically. That's where science ends right now. We push it back and we push it back a little bit at a time, sometimes fractions of a second at a time, but we keep pushing it back. But anything before that, we just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. And I would say I base my position on what we do know, what we can test, and what we do see in laboratories. For instance, when we use super colliders and we create energy from matter, like what would have happened with an energetic Big Bang, what we find is we have equal amounts of matter and antimatter. And we don't find that anywhere in the universe today. We don't find antimatter essentially anywhere when we should have equal amounts. So I think what I base my belief on is what we do know. And I think that overwhelmingly points to a supernatural creator, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I guess my question would be twofold. One is, so if you have this, the only way that that this could have come about is if it was created, and you can't go back before the Big Bang or before what we call the singularity. What is your explanation for how the creator was created? Like what is sort of your reasoning there with that? So if a universe can't be eternal,
well, I mean,
how can a creator be eternal?
For the Big Bang to happen, the singularity would have to come from somewhere. The matter would have to come from somewhere. The energy would have to come from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I think that it just popping into existence would violate known physical laws.
Would a god not violate known physical laws as well? For a god to pop into position, I think a god popping into existence would be a lot more improbable and than the singularity. That's just the way that looks to me, because the singularity is mathematical. We trace it back to that. As far as a god, though, I don't know that there's any mathematical principles that would necessarily confirm a deity.
Sure. And you'd have to obviously argue with somebody that believes a God popped into existence. As a Christian, I believe that God is eternal, but I also believe that, based on foundational Christian teachings, the first page basically of the Bible, that God is a spirit, he's not physical, therefore he would not be bound to the physical laws.
So my question about that is, how does that work exactly? Because you're making scientific claims about the physical world that you say proves the existence of this supernatural thing. And I guess my question is, how do you come to that conclusion? Where is the evidence for that? Or how does that work, like, scientifically?
Where have we seen spiritual?
So
go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, basically what I'm saying is, based on everything we know about the physical laws, we know that the physical universe couldn't bring itself into existence, and it could not be eternal. And I think that leaves us with the only viable scientific option being a supernatural creator, somebody outside of the physical had to have brought it into existence.
Why does it have to be somebody? I guess I don't understand that. Where we make that leap from it being something outside of our known understanding of the cosmos must set this into
Well, not
motion.
outside
Or
our understanding of the universe. I'm saying outside of the physical, something not physical.
And that's my question: is how do you determine that? Like, how did you come to the determination that absolutely it is true that something exists outside of the physical world?
Well, that's my whole point. If it can't be created from nothing and eternal.
So what are the properties of a God that exists outside?
That I know of. If you can come up with a fourth option, I would love to explore that. But I've never heard a viable fourth option.
I don't know that this is a viable fourth option. I think we're making a logical leap here to go from from what we understand about the physical laws of our universe, that things need to adhere to these laws, but our laws break down when we go back this far. So therefore, there's a God beyond that. That doesn't follow to me. I'm not sure where you get. I can get that. Yeah, we go back here and then we don't know, which is what science is saying right now. I don't know where we go from we don't know to that there's
God.
A God.
Yeah.
Hey, Brian, can I just correct one thing you said? You said if we go back far enough that the laws of physics break down. That's not the point I'm making. I'm definitely saying that the laws of physics have not broken down. I'm saying they were true. The universe came into existence and they're true now. I'm not saying that they broke down. I'm saying
that's actually what the Big Bang is. It's where our
secularist that goes with the Big Bang that has to violate the known laws of physics and say, well, the laws of physics had to have been different when the universe came into existence. So that wouldn't be my position.
So just to make a correction on the scientific claim here, it's not that the actual laws of physics breaks down. It's that our understanding of the laws of physics breaks down. So we just do not have the understanding to determine what happened at a certain point back into our past based on what we see in the present moment. That doesn't mean that there are no laws that can account for the Big Bang. It just means that we don't know them.
And that's fair. And that's why I would say that the evidence and what we do know and what we do test and what we do observe points to a supernatural creator at this point.
And that's where I'm confused because I see a lot of physical stuff that I can test and touch and talk about, but I don't see how a being with intent and with action and with intelligence can exist but not exist and be physical but not physical and have thought but not thought. I'm just having a really hard time wrapping my mind around
physical.
this being.
Thoughts aren't physical.
They are when it comes to chemical reactions.
The fundamental Christian position is that God is a spirit. He's not physical.
Okay, so how does that work?
Well, by physical laws. Thoughts aren't physical. Ideas aren't.
Thoughts are chemical and electroreceptor reactions, synapse firing in your brain. They're physical. We can actually X-ray your head and see them going off in your mind. They can ask you questions. They can have you play the violin.
You can't taste the thought. You can't.
You can measure it. What
does the thought feel like? You can't. Anyway.
Okay, so I guess my question is, you have this concept. I'm sorry, what?
I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
Okay. No, I was just so my question that I don't feel like you've answered that I'm kind of trying to wrap my mind around is you have this concept of this thing that you know exists, and this thing that you know exists has properties that you know work, and that they explain the beginning of the universe and why we're here in our reality. And my question is, how do you come to that determination that this being that has these properties actually exists versus an idea or a theory that you have in your head?
I base it on the first two laws of thermodynamics, that the universe, a rock, a fire, cannot create itself from nothing, and that a fire cannot burn forever. Those are the first two laws of thermodynamics. And if those two are both true and hold up, then what would be another plausible explanation for the universe coming into existence other than a physical, powerful, personal, which I could get into later as to why I would think it would be personal, being bringing that.
Yeah, we'd have a long leap to get from where we're at right now to the personal part.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, but I haven't really, so far the stuff you've listed off, I haven't really agreed with much of it. So let's go back through though. Like, I don't want to get into personal. What was the first characteristic that you were giving? Okay. So first of all, the thermodynamics. Okay. So The second law of thermodynamics is that, entropy, essentially, what we talked about at the beginning. It's, things winding down, essentially. It's you hear it as an argument for the universe not being as old as it is. Yeah. So how old do you think that the universe is based on what we see? Do you think that it's the 13.8 billion years that the model shows?
No, I don't. And what's interesting is I just heard a study come out not too long ago. Now that they may be off years, but that aside, I do believe, based on the science and the Bible.
Okay, so if the model is built, well, hold on, because we need to address that real quick. So if the model's built to show that the state we're in right now, as far as moving towards entropy, is what they expect based on the model that we've built, then it's what we're seeing is what we expect to be seeing within the framework of the model, right?
What he's asking is there a flaw that you're seeing to the model that we have that shows that our universe is as old as we think it is, which I'll grant is updated as we get more and more information about the universe.
Sure. Yeah, I think there's a lot of issues with the dating of the universe. But I mean, getting back to the entropy point, my point really isn't how old it is or how young it is. My point is that it can't be eternal.
Who said it had to be eternal?
That we see out in space.
That's definitely not my model. Doesn't say it's eternal.
Well, I'm just making the point that it can't be.
Well, you're making a scientific claim that now, so you're saying it can't be eternal. We don't know that for sure based on the evidence that we have. We can say it appears not to be.
Well, surely it appears not. Fire can't burn forever.
Right, but we don't know what's beyond our universe.
Cold and dead. It would all be
right.
It would be cold and dead. There would be no fires in outer space. I mean,
but that's not what our model shows. Our model shows that it'll be where it is now. Why are you thinking it would be cold and dead?
Because a fire can't burn forever. It would expend its available energy, and if it's eternal, if it's always been burning, it can't just a perpetual motion machine is
so anything that's burning's always been burning.
No, I'm saying if it was always burning, it would not still be burning. I'm saying all the fires would have eventually burned out. Just like when you have a campfire, it eventually burns out.
Okay, but let's
this campfire has been here for millions.
Yeah, but you can throw new logs on it. New fuel can be added to the fire. You're making an assumption that the model, for our model to work, that it had to always been burning to not begin at the Big Bang, and that's not the case. It's that we don't know from before, but the fuel has been there. We don't know how long or what ignited it. Using your fire analogy, we don't know what ignited it. So, or when it ignited, even, because, like I said, it's just, the Big Bang is just when our model breaks down, when our understanding of the physics of the time period breaks down. That's not saying it's the beginning, but we don't know is the current answer. But no one's claiming it had to go on forever or anything like that, or that it started at this point. It's I don't know is the current answer.
Okay, yeah, and I've talked to plenty of atheists, and I would say that that's probably the majority view, is that it is eternal. To be honest with you, that's kind of what I found.
That's kind of a bit of an argument ad populum, where it's like, because a lot of atheists that may or may not be educated in science believe a certain way, that therefore it represents like the scientific view or the what we think is the correct view. I would say that's a little bit it's an incorrect way of looking at it, because I can tell you from my perspective as an atheist, most atheists I know don't think that the universe is eternal. So now it becomes like a tit for tat, you versus me. What do atheists believe? But what I'm more interested in is why you believe what you believe. And it sounds an awful lot to me like sort of an argument from ignorance. And don't take offense to the term ignorance. It just means like what you don't know, right? So you're arguing, well, I don't know how this is possible, therefore God. And I'm trying to get from the I don't know how this is possible to the God. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I don't take any offense to that. I know exactly what you mean. The argument
Okay.
from incredulity or
Yep.
a God of the gaps theory, and that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm saying it's a positive answer based on what we know, based on what we see, based on what we can test.
So
That would be
what can we say based on the laws that you're talking about? Like, okay, the universe, let's assume for the sake of argument that you're correct, the universe has to have had a beginning and an end, and that the universe is going to run out of energy, that it's going to burn out. How do you get from those two things being true to therefore what created the universe is this thing with these properties? That's what I keep kind of going back to, is I think we all agree on what we observe now, and I think we all agree on what is currently our reality. Where we disagree is where you get from the I don't know to the therefore here's this thing with these properties. And so that's what I'm trying to kind of eke out of you. It sounds redundant, but I'm just not quite understanding how you come to that conclusion.
And I would just reiterate that I've been asking for a fourth position for many years. I've never heard anything viable. So what I guess it boils down to, and we can move on to a different topic after this, but what it would boil down to for me is that as far as what I've seen and what I've...
Oh, you cut out a little bit. Are you still there?
Based on the science that... Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you cut out.
Yeah,
so if you
I
could
can
just
hear you.
restate. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't know how much you heard, but I said we can move on after this. But what I'm still looking for a fourth viable, that I'd be more than willing to consider. But based on what we know now, based on what we study, based on all the science that I've studied, it seems to me the only plausible and scientific explanation is a supernatural creator. I can't come up with a fourth option, and I'm just saying, for me personally, that's where the evidence points to.
I don't think that we've even got it close to that being what the evidence points to. We would like to talk to you about some of your other stuff here, some of your additional things that you had mentioned that we could get to. Unfortunately, we're short on time. We got a few calls waiting in the queue. So will we be able to get you to call back maybe next week or the week after? If you want to talk to me the week after.
Sure, I'll call back and we can talk about how life is information based.
Oh, that'd be a good topic to pick back up on.
Definitely.
Yeah. It was fun talking to you, though. I really enjoyed it.
No, thank you guys. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, thank you, Bo.
Sorry for the phone issues.
Oh, it might not even be on your end. I don't know. Don't worry about it. Okay, so I think what Ethan was saying was moving on to...
I think we got Ricky waiting in the queue.
So Ricky says, paradigm adventure, ghosts exist and are real. Ooh, that sounds cool. So Ricky, hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
We're doing awesome. Thank you. I just answered for Brian. You're doing awesome.
You're right, though. I'm feeling pretty good tonight.
Fantastic. So
Good,
Ricky,
good.
yeah, let's get into this.
Yeah.
Ghost, yeah. What's up? I'd like to hear about some real ghost.
Oh yeah. So my name is Ricky. I am a paranormal investigator here from Chicago, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
I just started YouTube. I started my adventure 6 months ago. I'm really big into the paranormal. I've never done anything like this before. I've always watched TV shows like Ghost Adventures, Paranormal States, different kinds of shows. But you know, I started this journey on my own, trying to find out the existence of ghosts. Are they real? Like, is this something that goes on, or is it just scripted stuff? But I can assure you that this stuff is real. This is 100% real. I've seen it with my own eyes back in 5 months ago. That's the only time I only encountered a ghost in front of my face and caught on camera. All the other times I've investigated with abandoned buildings in Indiana, Chicago. I investigated Yorktown Memorial Hospital in Texas. All kinds of different things that happened to me over the past 6 months, and it made me into a huge believer than I already was.
Okay, so you've been ghost hunting now for 6 months, you said?
6 months, yes.
Okay, so what was it during this time, or even maybe before this time, that convinced you from ghosts may or may not be real to yes, they are real? What specifically was it that convinced you?
Yeah,
Like,
so I always believed that it was real, but having your own experience and having, seeing what I saw made you a 100% believer. Like, what is that? Like, what did I just see? What did I just capture? And that's what really made me a believer in that field. And I've always been interested in this type of work, this type of field for over 15 years, since I was like a very young age. And I just recently I just started doing this on my own. I watched YouTubers do it, so I'm like, I could do it as well, and this is the stuff that I capture.
So if I were to ask you for like say one or two examples of evidence, what is the evidence that you have that these ghosts? Because I know personal experience, a lot of people have a lot of different personal experiences that may or may not be related back to a real event, or something that would be considered a ghost. So what specifically is your evidence?
My evidence would be the videos that I put out. So one interesting thing that I come to figure out during my 6 months of doing this, it's I don't know if you guys are familiar with the SB11 spirit box.
No, I think I've heard it mentioned when I've
So it's
watched this show in the past, but
yeah. So it's basically a radio station, basically. Just play backwards in a different speeds, and spirits are able to manipulate that white noise, and you could actually hear their voices from that spirit box. And many times in my videos, these spirits know my name without me saying my name, and that is very chilling. That is very compelling to me. How is a spirit knowing my name when I have never said my name walking into this location? And it's been very it's been more than one location that this
so
happened.
this is a
And
box.
they were on my videos. Mhm.
I was just going to go back to the spirit box thing to make sure I understand. So it's a box that you
Yeah.
play
Yeah.
radio stations or radio waves backwards. Like, how does that work exactly?
Yeah. So you can manipulate this spirit box however you like. This certain spirit box that I have has a AM and FM playing at the same time. You could manipulate them as in how fast you want the radio stations to go. Some are very slow, like channeling to different stations very slow or very fast. I like putting my settings on very high, very fast, and reverse it. Because if you listen to the radio forward, you could hear voices, just like I'm talking right now.
That was gonna be
If
my
I were to
question.
reverse the radio station and you hear voices like I'm talking right now, that's kind of questionable. Like, you can't hear voices backwards.
Have you ever
Like how
heard?
I'm talking right
Have
now.
you ever heard of the Satanic Panic? Do you know what that is?
What was that again?
Have you ever heard of the Satanic Panic?
A little bit. It was the satanic. What was it again?
Satanic Panic, and it's okay. I'll go ahead and explain. So
No.
a
I
lot
have
of people
not
freaked
heard
out
of that
because when you took albums that were like heavy rock albums and you played them backwards, they were hearing like these different words come
I
out, like
heard of that.
different
Yeah.
messages.
Ozzy Osbourne was the one I remember the most. Well,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
Alice Cooper too, but Ozzy Osbourne, yeah, you play him backwards and
then
what's
you
he
hear him.
saying here? Yeah.
Yeah, and what they've determined is that like
Yeah.
language has certain sounds and textures and stuff to it, and that just statistically, if you play things backwards enough things are going to sound similar enough to other words that you're going to pick up on them, right? And so sometimes you'd listen to that
Yeah.
and just hear garbling and gooking and not really know what it is. But then when they tell you the lyrics that you're supposed to hear and then you listen again, suddenly those lyrics become clear. Or if they say, hey, there's a voice in here, it's going to say a word, listen for it. You'll listen for the one little bit of that gook that sounds like a word.
Remember the Laurel and Yanny thing that went around on the I think it was social media where you played a little video and some people would hear it saying Yanny and some people would hear it saying Laurel. Do you remember that? Because it's the same deal.
I do. I am very familiar
Ooh, somebody
with
in
that.
chat.
Yeah.
Somebody in chat just said the name of it. It's
It's
I can't.
audible pareidolia.
Pareidolia.
Yeah.
Okay, I was about to say I don't want to try and pronounce that. Yeah, so it's actually a phenomenon, and it's well studied scientifically as being a mental phenomenon, as being something that our minds do because we're pattern seekers. So my question to you is, when you're playing radio waves backwards, and you know that there's voices going over these radio stations, and you play them backwards, and you hear a bunch of garbage, but then every once in a while you hear a word. How do you determine that that word is a ghost versus just your brain recognizing sort of the sound or the cadence and deciding it's a word?
Yeah. So every time I do an investigation, I listen closely to what it's saying. Later on, I review what I capture, and that's when I make my judgments on what it's saying. Sometimes I get different words that don't make sense. Sometimes I do get sentences that do make sense, and not only do they make sense, it's something that I'm asking. Like like I could ask, like, what are you guys doing here? And then it gives me an intelligent response back, and that's when I know it is something. It is basically a spirit.
I just thought of a cool experiment we could do. Would you be up for something like one of your investigations? I think Ethan was down for having some contact information shared. So on your next investigation, if you take some EVP, could you do like when you review it, you listen to it, write down what you're hearing from the EVP, okay, what you hear it saying, and then a third party listens to the EVP on a different piece of paper, writes down what they think it's saying, and you both fold it up and put it in an envelope separately, and Ethan could open it on the show so we can see if
that is brilliant. And the other thing you can do is deliberately ask it different questions, but listen to the same strip of voice and see if everybody's questions get answered. Because I really think that there's a strong confirmation bias going on here.
And not only that, excuse me, since you're from Chicagoland, I have been looking for another paranormal investigator to take me out, because originally I was going to be going this coming weekend, but the person unfortunately canceled. So I would totally love to come with you. If you can come up with like a list of places, I'll bring my camera, maybe, a couple people or at least one other person to help film. And I would love to follow you on some haunts.
Oh yeah, that would be something that I would be really down for.
Yes.
And that's actually a good idea that you did say, you guys hear something and I hear something, I write it down, you guys write it down. And that's a really, really great idea. I would.
Yeah, because that will cipher out some of the, and I'm not saying we're all going to hear something different, but who knows? Well, let's find out. That's a good test of this phenomenon.
Yeah, that would be my next thing to say is if there is a phenomenon out there that can be measured, seen, observed, even if it's over these radio waves, there has to be a way to test it scientifically and to back it up and to verify it. And a lot of times these double-blind studies are how they determine whether or not something's true or not. But my question to you is, how open are you to the idea that, like, for example, I would have to say, like, I have to be open to the idea that ghosts are real and that I'm misunderstanding, and that if the proof is there or if someone can demonstrate it to me, I have to acknowledge that they're real because they are. Are you also willing to acknowledge that there's perhaps something going on here that that your brain is doing, or that where you're confirming that your beliefs are true, even though someone's presenting with you like with counter evidence that it might not be? Like, how open are you being wrong?
Yeah, like you mean like self-conscious?
Yeah, so
like your brain it's.
And I don't mean to put you on the spot there. I know it's kind of intense, but we're trying to have a discussion to determine what's true and what's not. And so my question to you is, like, how interested are you in that? Like, if there are scientific explanations for this, are you interested in hearing them? That's very cool.
Oh yeah,
I love hearing
I
you
am.
say that.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes,
I am very open.
I'm excited.
To everything, whether it is debunking things that I capture or other people capture,
or confirming.
I am very open to that. Yeah,
Fantastic.
confirming. And that's funny that you said that. I actually sent out a video from one of my ghost hunts when I captured a lady in white. I didn't want to confirm it right away 100% that it was real, but you could see it. It's real. So it's funny that you say that, because I just emailed the University of Loyola to analyze that video and make sure it's authentic and it's not matrix in any way, or it's not my flashlight. But yeah, I'm always open to debunking things, because at the end of the day, it's something that I'm very passionate about and want people to know that this stuff is real.
Yeah, and if
I get that confirmation that it's real, then it'll open some eyes for some people.
That is really cool. Well, I know I can already tell that Ethan is really excited to get in touch with you. So we are going to start moving on to the next caller, because shockingly enough, we have a lineup tonight. So, and I'm really excited about that. But I want to make sure that we get to everybody. So, Ricky, we're going to let you go, but that was really cool talking to you.
Yeah.
And I am going to watch if you and Ethan meet up, I will be watching that video.
Thanks.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Sweet. Thanks, Ricky.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's really cool to be able to actually scientifically test stuff versus just like throwing stuff out there and making claims. Like, that is the kind of stuff I like.
Yeah, I love that he was willing to, to say, yeah, let's do this experiment. Let's find out what we whether this is holding up to scrutiny or not. Let's pop over to Corey though from South Carolina and see.
Yeah, let's do it.
Corey, with us? Hey.
Yes.
There we go. Hey, Corey. So it says we should be more logical and aware of our biases. Can I be the first one to say I agree?
Yes. Yeah, I think we should be. I know that we pick a side and stuff, and we want to try to do the best to represent ourselves, but I do think we get carried away and we overlook certain things.
Okay, so can you give me an example? I mean, I agree, but yeah.
I want to say that's basically what biases are. It's when you overlook things because of your personal experience. But yeah, go ahead.
Okay. For instance, going through the BLM movement, it's like, yes, we don't want racism. We're totally against that and stuff, right? But stuff was like the defunding the police and stuff like that, right?
Not with defunding.
Me as a cashier, yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I might not agree with everything that you're putting out there, but go ahead and finish. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Me as a cashier, I can see some actual racism actually happening and stuff. I can see where there are some racial differences. And so it's not about, and a good example of this is as a cashier, I'll be getting people coming in with IDs, right?
Okay.
And I'll be asking them, hey, do you have your ID? More likely, a black man is not going to have their ID. Now, I don't think that's personally on them. I think anybody would experience the same way. I look at it as a foundational issue. I look at it through heritage and stuff like that, that there's certain things that, hey, a black man's not going to want to show his ID as much because he's scared of the officers, and that's been dictated down through generations.
So I just want to be clear. You're saying they don't even keep their ID on them. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
So a white man's going to have more likely their ID.
Okay. And you've observed this because
and that's
you're a
just
cashier.
usually how it works.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I work as a cashier, so I can verify this. I got cameras and stuff. I got audio. I can verify all of this.
And I believe you, Corey. I wouldn't even ask for you to verify it. My question though is, so you're talking about us being more aware of our biases. I'm assuming you mean us as atheists. So how are you tying in a black man being less likely to have an ID, tying that into our atheist biases? I'm a little bit confused how those two connect.
Okay. Well, I just think that we kind of goes towards how, as atheists, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're already, we already get picked on. We're already the less of,
we're a marginalized group. Sure. I can agree with that.
We're the marginalized group. And so we're naturally going to go to fight for equality. We're naturally more likely going to go with the majority
marginalized group
of a group that's going to support
strengthen numbers,
like
right?
Black African Americans.
Right.
Yeah.
With you so far. Mm-hmm.
So
I was bringing in the ideas of stuff like that. Yes, we do care. I think that's just natural for rights. I think there's just a line where we need to draw on certain issues.
It almost,
I don't think a defunding a police force, I think organize it in certain ways, like taking the money that they already have and organize it in a different way is the better of doing that. Finding resources for Black African Americans so when they get out in the world, they're not just doing crimes back up again.
Actually, the defund the police, that's what it was about, was reallocating that the funding towards other social services to supplement police. It was just a really bad way of selling the idea by making that the hashtag and making that the name of the movement. It was bad PR. That wasn't the initial. I don't support that notion that they would actually take the money from all the police. And no, what we need to do is about police reform. It's about reforming our legal system. It's about basically reforming the whole entire judicial branch is what the movement is really pushing for, if you think about it.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to say. It's like, I get what the movement actually means and stuff, but coming from an outsider perspective, it can come off as that. And like you said, bad PR. There's just certain ways that we should approach situations. We shouldn't just promote a movement until we tell them exactly how we feel about it, and to tell them like, hey, this is what you should do, and this is what we mean by this. We should be promoting it through that way.
So this is where social activism gets really super fuzzy, right? Because you have social activists that exist on this spectrum. And so we could take Black Lives Matter, LGBT, atheists, any like Asian Lives Matter, any marginalized group that has sort of an activist core to it. You have this spectrum. And so when you say like, be careful aligning yourself with that, that activist movement, I agree with you. Like you should know what they represent and what they're calling for. But when you have this fringe group that's sort of either miscommunicating or over communicating or getting violent about something, I really hesitate to say that it's good to allow that fringe group to scare us away from all rallying together. Right. So there's some some parts of the LGBT movement that I might not agree with, but I'm still going to support the rest. And some parts of Black Lives Matter, but maybe not defunding the police. Right.
Individuals can be radical without the whole movement being radical or extremist.
Right. And I do agree, though, Corey, with your statement that we need to understand what it is that's being represented, and we need to speak to like either against whatever that little bit is, or we need to speak for the bits that are good. We need to do better at communicating what our stance is. I agree.
And can I just clarify, because I don't want there to be any miscommunication. When I said reforming our retooling of the judicial system, I meant the court systems. The police would actually be on the executive side of our government, I believe, but they need reform too, of course, and that's it's all part of the same movement and push for that. Go ahead.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to say. I think since we're logical and we try to promote skepticism, and we try to get Christians to understand, like, hey, we're use logic when they see logical headlines and stuff. right? Like defunding the police, and we get on the bandwagon on that without saying our point of view on the subject, I think it can actually hurt us.
I think you're right there. I agree. I think we should get better at communicating. Yeah. And at getting our platforms to be clearly articulated. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think we just get away with certain things. It's like we hop on the bandwagon and we're too clear. We hop on it just because it's what we represent, it's what we stand for, and that's what we want. But if there's something that is going to hurt us in the long run, right, and actually be detrimental, we might need to reevaluate how we say something.
Right. Yeah. That's been a problem with a lot of progressive movements, and both real and fabricated. Just kind of a bad take on what progress means and what steps we need to take. I think me and Laura are both pretty much in agreement with what you're saying here. Yeah. So, unless you have any final thought, we got to pop over to our next call, so we make sure to get everybody in.
Okay, I'll call back next week. Handling some apologetics and stuff like that. But
I like it. Yeah.
Other than that, I think I'm good.
Cool. Thank you, Corey. Yeah, I think you made a good point. Thank you for calling in. All right. I think we are moving on to Isaiah, who says, why would the supernatural even exist? So, wonderful question. I think that was a good one to move on to.
Hey there, Isaiah.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, how's it going, Brian?
Doing all right.
Aloha, Laura. Good to see
Aloha. Thank you. You too.
Yeah, calling from the Big Island. So yeah, and also, I have the fourth option for your first caller.
Oh,
and it ties into why the supernatural would even exist. So, this is an older idea of the deity. Instead of it being immaterial, it's actually absolute substance. It is the highest possible energy density that space can even hold. I know it seems like a radical concept, but you're familiar with the initial singularity of the Big Bang, that idea?
Correct.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So combine that with quantum field theory. In other words, it's not an infinitesimal point-like dot. The field of the singularity, imagine it like an infinite quantum field. It has no end. And even embedded in the logic of the Big Bang story, the singularity is all there is. There's no nothing space outside of it. It effectively has no borders. So it's a little bit of a conceptual shift there to think of it as an infinite substance, and then space-times arise like bubbles in that substance.
I think I've heard this theory before, actually.
Yep.
Yeah, the idea that universes are actually bubbles and that there might be many of them.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
We
could go into a multiverse theory, but so here's the thing: when this bubble is opened, okay, it's kind of like the original substance. This hyperdense cork soup is what science would call it. It's just this smear of subatomic particles to the point it's a liquid. There's no space in between individual particles. There are no individual particles. It's actually not possible because there's no empty space. Space is filled.
Okay, so I have to cut you off.
Closed space-time. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to cut you off super quick because you're getting really scientific really fast and you're going to start talking way over us and it's going to be really hard to go back. So first of all, I have a couple of questions right off the bat. So this thing that you're presenting to us, just so I'm kind of clear, are you presenting, because it says, why would the supernatural even exist? Are you presenting a theory of how there is no God, but what the universe is like?
No, I'm a perennial panentheist. In other words, the perennial philosophy
two big words.
The many different things that we see comes from a single source, and that all actual spiritual traditions are different takes on a fundamental reality that we do share.
Okay, and so
then panentheism. Yeah.
Okay, I know. I know panentheism.
I don't. And maybe the listeners
Okay,
don't
cool.
either. So really quickly, what is it?
Well, he kind of just, I think it just
It is,
explained
Like
it
it's just
there.
okay, that's what it is then. Okay.
all
Yeah.
all the
That,
stuff that we find here is
It's all
within
connected.
a larger God, panentheism,
Got
pan
it.
all.
Okay.
So anyway, long story short, if you consider this oceanic singularity, this is the Almighty. There's nothing possible greater, and I would argue that it is the only thing worthy of the title God. There's no possible greater thing than an infinite absolute.
So it sounds like you're
that aside,
defining.
think of it.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what?
So you're defining the universe as being God? Like the universe and everything in it is
No.
God?
Sort of is.
Is within.
You have to
go
bear
ahead.
with the one who's never heard of this before.
I don't want to tell you what you believe.
Okay,
I'm just from my experience with yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay, so if you can imagine this infinite singularity like liquid light, it is just an ocean of liquid photons. Universes are places where the space is bent apart and the inherent forces, like this is pure physics, are spectrumed apart just like a rainbow, okay? And our type of matter, out of one of 6 types, is in one of these let's go with 6 colors that are unfolded when a universe gets lofted open, okay? Our type of material does not rise by itself. And we actually have scientific evidence of the universe being able to stabilize 5 other types of matter. One of them is in the standard model of particle generation. And just real quick, we got quarks, right?
Hold on, just real quick before we move too far into it, I just want to clarify something, because it's my understanding that when the universe was in the singularity state, that there was no matter, that it was that there was an energetic state before at the point of the singularity.
I have heard that before.
Yeah, it's beyond matter. Like atoms are like 0.0012 spaces, 1% actual stuff taking up the volume. And then we go further into quantum field theory. Those actual subatomic particles are excitational states of universe spanning field. So it's more like water droplets jumping off the surface of water because it's being vibrated. So what we're calling actual stuff isn't really, it's made of very, very, very small amounts of what we call actual stuff. So what I'm talking about is no space between subatomic particles. It's far denser than matter. I mean, we would get into the nuclear pasta type stuff in the middle of neutron stars to find anything of comparison.
Okay, so
that's what an absolute means.
Just to kind of bring it into like some sort of really coherent argument that we can talk back and forth about, because I could probably listen to you talk about this for about an hour and probably understand very little of it. What I'd really rather do is like kind of start to go point by point and sort of either digest it and sort of start to understand it, or maybe pick it apart and ask some questions about it.
There's a lot to unpack here.
Sure. Yeah, and there's just too much for the amount of the show we have left. And so, dang it, like I could spend hours talking to you about this, but I need to kind of bring it back down to simple.
I can wrap it up real fast.
Well, if I could just ask you like a question or two. Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure, go for it.
Okay. So
basically, when a universe is spectrum, sorry, you go ahead. I'll listen.
No, I just wanted to let you finish. Go ahead.
Okay, so when a universe is spectrumed open, our type of matter is only one of the 6 colors that simultaneously arise. And the other colors would represent other, you could call them membranes or regions of space-time that are in this universe, but are beyond our observable sphere. So they're parallel like membranes that we share the universe with. And this would be evident in the 5 times more dark matter that we can't see, but is influencing physical matter, and the 5 other types of quarks that our universe renders stable in the standard model of particle generation. We've got 3 levels of quarks and their anti-partners, and pretty darn good surety that there's no force density above that.
Are you saying that
so those other
antimatter
densities actually evaporate in ours?
Are you saying that the antimatter then that we observe exists outside? So our bubble has matter, and that the antimatter we observe, the reason we can't find it is because it exists outside of our bubble?
Outside of our membrane, but inside the same universal bubble. So it's still within the... So here, I gotcha. All of matter is like cool colors in the rainbow, and all of antimatter are the warm colors.
And this
They're
is just analogy,
simultaneously
right?
arising, but they are separate. Yeah, it's an analogy.
Okay,
We could
cool.
get into geometry, but that's a
No,
little
no,
more
let's keep it
technical.
at analogies because I'm really grasping to understand all
Sure.
this.
Sure.
Okay, so we have all the
So,
spectrum,
yeah,
and I get it. So keep going.
Yeah, it's spectrumed apart, and our region is directly surrounded by another larger region that would pattern for the next density level of matter-type particles. So you could call it a parallel realm. I just call it a parallel membrane, and they all occupy one single universe. So each universe that gets lofted open in this has an antimatter side and a matter side, because they are inverse to each other. Okay?
Okay.
The charge inversion between matter and antimatter switches the
Right.
positive and negative between
Exactly.
outside
Yeah,
and
I
inside.
do understand that. Yeah. And that if they
Okay.
hit, then they
So-
abolish each other or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're familiar with cymatics, like sound or vibration creating forms in sand?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, cool. So similarly, in like a bucket full of water, we got a round bucket full of water. When you vibrate it, it makes circular rings going to the inside. If you had a square bucket full of water and you vibrate it, those square boundaries would make a square wave going on the inside. So what would a spherical container, what kind of internal waveform would that make? I'm thinking spherical. So that's where you get the beginning of the atomic anatomy as like this, like a note inside of an instrument body. And the instrument body is the universe itself, and its outer periphery is spherical. There's one more feature that splits this into two equal hemispheres, a top half and a bottom half, like a disc or the surface of water, if you could think of the bottom of this bubble full of water. So the stuff above that surface has an inverse orientation to the stuff below that surface.
Okay, so I need to cut you
So
off here
that's
again really
where-
quick. And I'm going to be the jerk that keeps cutting you off because once it starts going over my head, I can visually follow it and then I can't. And what I'm worried about is that a lot of our listeners are probably on the same page as me. Because you're getting into some really scientific, heavily, like the physics stuff. So you said, hey, let me finish. And I really want you to finish. But if we could just slowly go point by point and just make sure that.
Is this, are you
I'll follow
adhering,
your
just to clarify, are you adhering to like M theory? Is that the direction that that you're going with the whole construct that you're talking about here? Is that what we're visualizing as a form of M theory?
So what I understand of M theory is that there's a larger background bulk and there are membranes traveling through it, and at the intersection or interaction of those membranes, space-times get lofted open. Is that your understanding?
Okay. Yeah, my understanding of M theory as a concept is more simple than that, but yeah, I'll just as far as what you said there, I'm not sure if that properly describes it or not, but I'm just wondering because I again I have a more simplified version of it, so go ahead.
Well, so I'm wondering if you could do something for me,
mainstream
Isaiah.
M theory.
Could you do me a favor?
I'm sorry, repeat that?
I was wondering if you could do me a favor, like while we're having this conversation. It's going to sound really pedantic, but when it comes to physics and arguments about physics, I think the best people to have that are physicians, like not physicians. My brain's physics
Physicists.
Physicists. Thank you. My brain went plot. There's just too many things cramming into it right now. So when it comes to the minute details of these theories, the best people to have these conversations are the ones that are experts at it. So when you're talking to us on a show or when the audience is listening, is there, it's going to sound really horrible, but is there any way of like putting it at like a 5th grade level where it's like, okay, you have these marbles in a jar and then you have sand that fills in the space between the marbles. And then you have like jelly that goes between the sand. I mean, something that kind of makes it a little bit. Yeah. And I'm sorry, I hate to, because right now what we're doing is we're talking over everybody's head and I'm not sure how we can determine whether or not. Yeah, no, I actually appreciate it that you're willing to do that.
I definitely appreciate. Thank you for bringing it back down. So yeah, I can definitely use real easy examples for this. So
perfect.
Let's take an imaginary square piece of rubber. Okay, it's a sheet of rubber, and you grab one side at your chest, and you grab the other side with your other hand. So you've got a bunch of rubber in both hands. Now stretch your outer hand out and keep one hand at your chest. So now you got a bunch of rubber at your center. and you've got a handful of rubber as far out as your arm can stretch. Now you've got this like string, this stretch out thin piece of rubber. And if you kept on stretching, if it would never break, you would thin it out to the point it would be like an atom wide. You wouldn't even see it, kind of thing.
Right.
You get that idea?
Yeah, perfect.
So
yeah.
So now let's apply that to the beginning of a universe. So out of this infinite mass is kind of like rubber. And this is basic physics, equal opposite reaction, right? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So we got to make a space in this stuff somehow. We haven't even gotten to a universe yet. So
right.
It has to move, the original field has to move outward to make a voided space. That's our bubble. That's our universe. Well, an equal opposite reaction, it pulls to the center of that space as well and stretches out a field in between a center and a periphery.
And this is mathematical? Like you've seen math on this? Or is it hypothetical?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, there's
and I'm not doubting the math. I'm just wondering.
The field has an eightfold symmetry, and so I would look for something like octonions in the math involving subatomic particles, which is way the hell over my head. But
I was about to say you're slipping back into genius talk again.
So that center and periphery, that really basic shape. These are just spheres. If you cut that in half, how do you write it? It's a two-dimensional object now. It's a circle around a dot, which is an extremely old symbol for God and for the beginning. It's found in Ra's name. It's found. It's called the circumpunct. It's formed with the compass. There's so much myth and legend around that symbol. It goes way back to the origins of our mythos, our religions, and things like that. So one of the ways I look at our mythos and history is that there was a time when we knew kind of how the universe works. I don't see civilization rising as a linear ascent. We've risen and fallen and risen and fallen, and I got all this just from considering an actual infinite and applying equal opposite reaction. Pretty basic stuff.
So now we're moving on to something a little bit different, which is
real quick. I want to thank Ian Davenport for his.
I'm so into this. I'm not paying attention. Yeah, thank you, Ian.
his sticker. Thank you, Ian.
Yeah. So now we're moving on to something a little bit different, which is the civilizations and the advanced technology civilization theory. And I've heard it a lot, and I found some arguments compelling and some arguments not compelling. But what I want to know from you kind of is you have this whole sort of, and I hate to put it this way, but it almost sounds like you have sort of like this religion or this worldview built around this theory. And my question is, if there's so much science behind it, and if it's so sound, why is this not the prevailing theory?
Honestly, several reasons, actually.
Okay.
Some of the leading scientists, both geologists, cosmologists and everything, had an initial bias against any kind of religious story. So anything that was discovered that remotely could be attributed to something biblical was eschewed or shunned. And certainly that's not like pure science, but nonetheless, it was part of the social milieu at the time. And I think science is still catching up. And it's great that we go off what we observe and what we can test and everything. But again, we gotta imagine outside the boxes that we prescribe for ourselves.
I'm actually really interested in that this idea that the scientific community has a bias towards religious concepts. It seems like more what's happened is that the religious concepts didn't hold up to the scientific method, and they don't hold up to the scientific method.
Yeah, I think the first problem that I have with that claim is that a lot of the early scientists were Christian, and they were trying really hard to prove their cosmology. And in some cases, they were sort of in some ways able to. So I don't really see that particular argument holding up. And then the other thing is a lot of these things that you're talking about are anti-Christian. Like none of this stuff that you've presented supports Christianity. So I'm really having a hard time with that one.
I'm not necessarily trying to support Christianity, but I do see it as an instructional mythos, which is more than we really have time to get into. Let me give you a specific example. In geology, the early geologists were catastrophists. The evidence they found suggested that some huge freaking thing happened not all that far in the past, maybe 13,000 years ago or so. and it totally rearranged the landscape. Well, it was too close to like the Great Flood and things like that. So a lot of the paradigm that was adopted and can be supported is gradual.
Whoa!
Wait, what about
geological?
Go
What
ahead, Brian.
catastrophe? What catastrophe are we talking about? I'm a big nerd, so I kind of like this stuff. Are we talking about like the KT extinction event or the Great Dying? The Great Dying would have been into the Permian 450 million years ago, whereas the KT was 65 million years ago. Both were huge, catastrophic extinction events, but there are 6 of them altogether that have hit over the last billion years or so. So is one of those specifically the catastrophic event that you're referring to?
Yes, I think the main one that spawned most the mythos was 13,000 years ago, and it was a multi-headed comet hit that wrapped around the planet. It ended the Ice Age. It was the cause of the Younger Dryas flash melt and then refreeze. It rose global ocean levels 400 feet. And there's evidence of a global firestorm in the northern hemisphere that was sparked off by it causing absolute climate chaos for decades.
Okay, and do modern geologists, because I'm not familiar with that particular one, and I'm not going to claim to be very familiar with geological history, period, but other than just a passing knowledge. But because you said past geologists. Sure, and I'm not saying it didn't happen. What I'm asking is what you were saying, there's this conspiracy where early geologists didn't want these catastrophic events to match up with biblical history. I'm curious what modern geologists think about all this stuff.
It's still coming out. So there's part of a crater that's been revealed in Greenland, the Hiawatha crater, that matches the same time period. There's huge. You have to see it from the air to be able to appreciate the scale of splash damage these things did all around. Like these huge oval shaped, not necessarily craters, but just oval geologic features that are surrounding a much larger crater-like feature. One of the main ones is the Hiawatha crater in Greenland.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and these are scientists that are discovering these things.
Yes, geologists. One of them is Randall Carlson. He's again he's a bit out there, which is one of the reasons why I love him. Hell, I'm a bit out there, but he's a geologist, and he's showing scale invariance between these massive runoffs creating like the Grand Canyon and the scab lands that you would have to have 300 feet of moving water to yank bedrock up off the ground and deposit it way the hell away. Things like there's a smaller hypothesis of a giant lake that was let go during the beginning of the Ice Age, and that did all the damage.
Do you know what else moves really giant rocks though? Like there's lots of things, but go ahead, Brian.
I was gonna say not only is the theory of the catastrophe with the lake, when the glaciers were kind of receding, the lake that broke open and just poured all of its water across North America. Is that there's actually physical evidence for that event happening. We actually see, you can actually stand up on the hill. I believe it's in the Black Hills in South Dakota. You can actually stand up and you can see where it kind of washed out as that dam broke. It was a dam of ice and just glacier material, rocks and tree branches and whatever got caught up in the ice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, we have evidence of a massive, pardon the term, flood of water at that time, but it's attributed to Lake Okanagan, it was called. And just try to appreciate the kinetic force and release of a comet hitting the ice cap. I mean, they impact 3 times faster than meteorites. The amount of heat and flash vaporizing of all that water would very easily account for not only the 200-foot rise in ocean level that was in 2 pulses, but also exactly what Lake Okanagan is attributed to having caused this massive washout that basically ended the megafauna of the North American continent.
Okay, when it comes to megafauna, this is the topic I just love.
I love
so we can actually trace
Thank you.
We can actually trace the extinction events of the megafauna to the earliest, in some North America, you see it with the arrival of the Clovis people. Now, humanity evolved they evolved in Africa, and then civilization evolved in the Middle East. So humans have been kicking around Africa for a couple million years. We've been in the Middle East and in the Indian subcontinent for maybe half a million years shorter than that, but we've been there for a long time. So the megafauna in those areas were basically they evolved alongside of us. So they really have this natural drive to coexist with us in these instincts that these animals in other areas of the world just didn't have. So when these two-legged apes arrived in North America, the mammoths and the giant ground sloths really didn't they didn't know to be scared of them. So there was this mass extinction event that just rolled along, and you can actually trace the last evidence of these animals with the arrival of humans to within sometimes, while we're still seeing it, we've seen it in modern time, because the islands in the Pacific, those were kind of the last vestige of these rare giant animals, and as soon as people came to those islands, they wiped them out too. You see it with like the moa, the dodo. Essentially, birds are really prone to suffer from this in island conditions. South America was actually an island too, and got connected with North. Okay, I'm going off on a tangent here. Okay, so South America was connected by the time people got there anyway. But we actually can clock the movement of humanity across the globe with these major extinction events. Now, I'm not saying no animals died in an impact event. I'm not saying no animals died in that flood during the Younger Dryas,
or from climate changes.
However, I am leaning more towards humanity being the cause of the extinction of the megafauna across the globe.
Yeah. I mean, certainly they would have been dealt a huge blow like the dinosaurs were. All the big, complex organisms are going to have an extremely hard time when the normal environmental balance is just thrown into absolute chaos. There's no sunlight for, I don't know, weeks or months or more. And so the ones that survive would be easily picked off by man as well. A real interesting feature off the coast of Russia are called the Bone Islands. And it's just piles and piles and piles of megafauna bones. Like they were a part of some huge wash.
I kind of want to back this up a little bit, because we're getting down this like incredibly geeky and fun sort of like rabbit hole. But the whole, and I love it. Like, I mean, no, I'm going to have to hit Brian up in private and be like, hey, I'm a cultural anthropologist and you're a geek and let's get together and talk. But okay, so the original question though, getting kind of back to that and getting back on track is, so you have these extinction events, you have this sort of conspiracy that you have with scientists either purposely misrepresenting or whatever, these natural phenomena, or like, let's just say that there's 2 or 3 different reasons why scientists can give misinformation. Let's say one of them is they deliberately want to lie. One of them is that they just get the information wrong. And the other one is that they do the best with the information that they have, but that they're missing other information. And I'm sure that there's a myriad other reasons why scientists get things wrong. But let's just kind of go with that for a second. And let's say, yes, scientists got things wrong. What about your specific theory? Like, what makes yours more true, or why is yours the correct version versus what's mainstream?
I think it's plausible with all the evidence I have been able to find, and that takes a long time to get into a mainstream story. So like the mainstream story we have is the paradigm of the last several decades, and we keep learning, we keep updating. It's like, oh, we learn more about magnetism. It's not a supernatural effect. It's because all the atoms are in alignment, sharing electrons and things like that. So I think it's a constant discovery. I think we're in the process of still writing our past story, and I think that this catastrophe is part of it. I think it both lends to fallen angel mythos and global flood mythos. We had an impact in the Indian Ocean.
What I hear you saying is that a lot of these myths and stuff that we have from all these different religions, that they can be related back to different events. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah.
Like, so for example, if there was a great flood I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, just think about it. You have a multi-headed comet flying down towards the Earth, sweeping what do you want to call it? A third of the stars out of the sky with its tail bringing hell to earth, and all this fallen angel, rebel angel mythos is easily explained by comet impacts. We had a major
absolutely
one
agree with you there.
5,500 years ago in the Indian Ocean called the Burple Crater. We've got cuneiform writing talking about this happening. The Sumerians documented this. We have the Egyptians saying that Ra sent Sekhmet down in the form of a big shaggy lion's head, and the Nile was filled with blood from her wrath.
Yes,
What
so
would a comet be mythologized
so
as?
I completely agree. Like we even have comets that strike today, right? Like comets are not new, and they go back way before there were humans. And so I agree with you that when you talk about these cataclysmic events, whether it's a comet or a flood, or earthquake, volcano, whatever, that a lot of times they were related to deities, and they were worked into the myths and the religions of that time. In fact, I've even heard it said that Yahweh, the god of the Jewish tradition, started out as a volcano and a war god. And now, don't quote me on that; it's just something I heard. But if you go back through religious history and where it all connects, you can definitely see where, at least in part, the myths are based on their perceptions of reality. Now, where things get added to it is where we start to get into whether it's true or not. My question is, I'm agreeing with you there, but you made the claim that we have these rise and falls in technology, and to a certain degree, I would tend to agree with you. Like, we had the wiping out of the Alexandria Library, and that's in modern history. We know that happened, right? So we know that information gets lost. I would love to know what was in there, right?
Technologies get lost too. There's
the time.
Yeah.
But what you're talking about is sort of like this ancient, we used to know the secrets of the universe. And that's why we have this circle and this dot. That's where you're losing me. Like, where do you get that from?
Okay. So the idea of infinity has been around a long time. If you want a secular example, check out Chaos, Prima Materia, and Apeiron from Greece. That was by Anaximander. Apeiron. This formless primordial substance that all the different things are made out of. This goes back even further. It's called the cosmic ocean cosmogony. The Egyptians had it. The Sumerians had it. The Egyptians started with a great watery expanse called Nun, was the god Nun, and there was no space for creation, so Nun made a bubble inside of itself, and then a primordial mound in the center of the bubble, and Ra arose on that mound and started creating things by speaking them into being.
Yeah, so there's actually a lot of ancient myths that involve water creation. Yeah, they can sort of group together different creation myths. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you think about the way that we reproduce and your water breaking. So wherever that baby's coming from,
I would say it's even more simple than that. I would say we're surrounded by water. The earth is mostly water, and like water is a big part.
We're mostly water. Yeah.
So I can see how life coming from water naturally, like what he said, in the womb, and the fact that so much of the earth is covered in water. The water myth isn't really that compelling to me in terms of how it relates to, like, very specifically to your claims. Where, I mean,
I got it. I got your answer.
Okay.
I have your answer. What is the closest analogous physical thing that humans can see and touch and play in that would represent an infinite expanse of undifferentiated substance that can just become any shape you want it to make? What would we use? If I was going to tell a story about the infinite singularity that made all things, what human level?
Oh yeah, like water. Yeah, for sure. I'm with you. And the way that we translate the ancient texts and stuff, the word water a lot is used for. Sometimes the modern books will translate it to like ether or something along those lines, but we make it an analog to water. I get you there. I'm with you there, and I'm on board with that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just think it's such a highly functional symbol, which is why it would be storified for passing down through time in more primitive cultures that have no idea about universal beginnings or have even thought about it or anything like that. So, and then again, just considering basic physics, equal opposite reaction. If this infinite ocean has to move away from a space to make a bubble for creation, it also has to move to the center of that space. Equal opposite reaction. So that's where I get the circle around the dot. And that as a vibratory container patterns directly for atoms. A peripheral sphere-like, and we've got the cloud model of electrons, but it's sphere-ish with a nucleus. And you've got a probability field strung out between it that the electrons appear in.
So I have a question about like ancient symbology, right? So the circle and dot is very, very, very popular in ancient symbology throughout many different cultures, and it has many different meanings. Sometimes it's the sun, sometimes it's the earth, sometimes it's directions. I just recently learned that the petroglyphs in the area that I live are actually directional. So when you see like a buffalo and it has a certain number of things sticking off of its head, the buffalo actually signifies something, and those things signify the distance where they found it, right? Like a water is X number of miles away or whatever. And so that you have this symbology that already has a meaning, and we can determine some of the meanings. So my question is, if the circle and the dot exists with a specific given meaning that we know about, how do you determine that this other one that exists that we don't know the meaning to it, how do you determine that that is the meaning of that circle and that dot? Like, where is that recorded?
I don't. I just find I find it plausible, is what I have to say.
Ooh, I like that. I love that you use the word plausible.
Neat that you mentioned that. I find it more plausible than anything else I've heard, and I'm very open to hearing more things.
That's awesome.
Circle around the dot. In trail sign, if you're walking on a trail and you find that sign, whoever left it, they mean they have gone back home the way that they came. I thought
did
that
not know
was so
that.
cool.
I like the hobo signs or whatever, the traveler signs. Is that where that one comes from?
I guess, I don't know. It's known as trail sign. That, like, instead of an arrow or a cairn just pointing where you go, you've reached the end of someone else's trail, and that sign means that they have gone back home the way that they came. They haven't gone any other way. They haven't gone further than that circle and that dot.
Okay, so
then it also means
so I
gold
think
in
you're
alchemy.
almost like proving my point that there's a lot of different meanings behind that symbol, and so if we're gonna assign meaning to something, and we do this all the time as anthropologists and as archaeologists, where someone will find something, and because a similar culture has a similar thing, they will assign meaning to that thing without necessarily knowing. And then as they do more research, now they've got to turn around and put their foot in their mouth, and they have to correct themselves. And that's why we get so much bad press, is because what we try to do as people is, as soon as we have a thing, we try to come up with the answer to it, or the story behind it, or the reason for it. And then we find that as we learn more and more and more, we're wrong, right? So I guess
story making ape.
Yes, and you, my friend, are human too. So I think my point is that it sounds like you have a really good claim, or maybe even if you have some evidence. Yeah, I mean, it could. I hate to say that it's just a neat story. Like, I'm not going to belittle it that much and just say, oh, that's a cool idea. Like, you have something that's really complicated. It's really articulate. It's really well thought out. But it's still at that claim stage. So I think my question is, how do you get yourself, or how do you inspire somebody else or a scientist to get from, hey, we have all these different theories about the beginning of the universe and the nature of the universe. Here's mine. Let's test it. Like, what's step 2 for you?
Okay. All right. The test I use is math and geometry, and just you gotta do a little bit of logic work, very little, before you get to the geometry that gives you testable answers on what we'd find in universal phenomenon. So it's simply this: the infinite one expanse, its waveform, are infinite ones. The original field was at maximum density, so the waveform is also at maximum density. The simplest possible expansive shape is a sphere. So what kind of predictions does a maximum sphere pack? They're all the same size. They're all the same expression of the same original thing. How much space does each sphere take up versus the space between the spheres? Okay, this is a hard.
So Isaiah, we're getting
hard, but this is a known mathematical problem.
Yeah, we're getting back into the heavy physics of it. Yeah. We don't have any time because we're at the end of the show. I guess my question is, like, you're at the point now where if this is going to be viable, you need to move it forward. Like, not with us, not on this show, but like, if this is a viable theory for the actual reality of our universe, it needs to be tested and put through peer review and talked about with scientists. And like, Brian and I are duly unqualified to do that. But what I'm thinking is, it's you have this very complex idea. I don't see where you're making the same connections. I don't make the same connections you make, but that doesn't mean that I'm right. So I guess that's
Or
where
that I'm right.
we're
Yeah, no.
or that you're right. And I appreciate that sort of honesty. I think that's phenomenal. Like I think for this to become viable, it needs more than just a discussion between the three of us.
Yeah, it's really interesting ideas, and I like brainstorming about speculative history as well. So I'm always down for that.
Can
But
I finish?
Go
Can
ahead.
I finish real quick because I want to be able to give the physicists something to actually chew on.
I think that's something that you're going to have to do,
Okay.
honestly, like through academic channels. Like I think if you just spout it off here. Yeah, I'm sorry, because we are at the end of the show. We actually have gone a little bit over.
You can look up sphere packing.
Look up what?
I'm sorry, but you can look up sphere packing on the wiki. It's a known mathematical problem. It's called the cannonball problem or the orange problem.
Stacking spheres together. I get it. Yeah. It's I understand the issue.
Last sentence on this is that the percentage of space that the expanded spheres take up is just about 74% of the whole. The space between the spheres, where the original field is now contracted into motion, is 26% of the total. Okay, this is math beyond my ability to do, but luckily there's a lot more smarter people that have done this and found this to a high degree of surety. What is the dark energy expansive constant versus the gravitational constant that we find in this universe? It's 74% expansion to about 26% gravitational contraction, and that gravitational contraction is 1 part matter that we can see and 5 parts dark matter. So that's where my logic hits the mathematical rubber road. That's where
you need to go and take it forward. Yeah, and get it tested and get it talked about.
That's
because for me as a layperson to be like, yeah, the two numbers
head.
are the same. I can't confirm that for you.
I'm just taking your word for a lot of the things you're saying tonight. Honestly.
No, look it up. I use a lot of different words, and I've checked all this myself. I do string it together, but I can back it up. And I thank you so much for the opportunity to chat and share it with you. I do appreciate it.
No, that is fascinating. Yeah, and I hope that it was more me asking questions out of sheer ignorance than me trying to tear your argument apart. I say if you think you have something that's that solid, that it needs to move forward, because every single brain that we have in the game trying to figure out our world and our past and our history is one more brain.
If you do move forward on that, let us know. I'd be interesting to have a follow-up about that. So
yeah, Brian was putting links in the chat for me about some of the stuff you were talking about. So don't think I won't be looking this stuff up and learning more about it, because it fascinates me, but it's
okay. Yeah.
It's so far
I'll put
over
some
my
links
head.
in the chat too of some of the stuff that I found.
Definitely.
For your perusal.
Yeah. Thank you.
We always appreciate your calls here, Isaiah, but we're fixing to wrap up. So
for sure. Here's Brian. Thank you. And thank you, Laura.
Yeah, thank you, Isaiah. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, have a pleasant evening on the island there.
Next time.
Yeah, a little jealous.
Aloha.
Aloha.
All right.
That was really cool. There was a lot there.
Yes. I was definitely not capable of handling that call. It's just like that stuff goes over my head very quickly.
Yeah, I think honestly, I enjoy that he was so patient with me, because I had more questions than I did actual discussion. But I appreciate that, because that's how we learn and that's how we like stretch our comfort zones. So man,
yeah,
cool.
there was a lot there, especially with the math stuff. I was I think I would need a whiteboard to try to keep up with all that.
Yeah.
What'd you think of your first episode, Laura?
Oh, I loved it. That was so much fun. Yeah,
Dude.
I could have talked to any one of them for so much longer, for hours.
You are a natural at this. Like, holy crap, man. You're pretty damn good.
No, there were a few times where my brain got ahead of my mouth and I just started like, blah, blah, blah. But I think a lot, and it's like, yeah, they really had me going. It was good.
Good. Yeah. So, what do you have going on?
Skeptic Hangout, our latest episode came out today. Wait, today is Tuesday. Comes out tomorrow. I'm sorry. So check out the latest episode of Skeptic Hangout tomorrow, and it comes out every Wednesday. And then I really got to get on top of making another Unapologetically Me video. So keep an eye out for that. Yeah. And then, and nonprofits. Yeah. I'll be on nonprofits this Sunday.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. That's a good show.
What about you, Brian?
Well, I have a review of a tomorrow at I think I got scheduled for 3. I have a video coming out about the evolution of bioluminescence. So that's pretty cool. And then this Saturday, we may be talking about doing some. I'm going to be doing a live stream, depending on who I get on there. We're either going to talk about how to properly vet information about the current vaccinations and stuff that people are putting out. So we may do that to how to do the proper research and go through and fact check things that claims that we say, but it's going to depend on if I want to get somebody who knows their way around some virology and immunology before I delve into it too much. So
that'd be cool.
Dale says Brian was awesome and I want his shirt. Laura, can I get a closer look at the art behind you?
Here, I'll get out of the way. So it's Lake Tahoe, Nevada / California. And my grandma painted it because she used to own an art gallery.
And then someone said they liked my shirt. Let me show you the
Yeah, you always have the most awesome shirts.
It's cats, baby.
Totally jelly.
Yeah, I have a whole closet full of these. Although I've got my few favorites now that I wear all the time, despite having I think I have one I could wear a new one every day for about 20 days. So yeah, the original goal was to get enough. So I have one for one new one for a month straight.
So you never wear the same one twice in a month?
Right, exactly. So I could always just keep switching these shirts. And I started originally, I wasn't wearing them when I would go out, but then I was like, dude, these shirts are me. So I go to the store in these outfits, and it's always you get looks, which is cool because to me, my clothes show my personality. And if I'm just walking around normally, my personality doesn't show. But with this shirt, it shows.
That is awesome. I love it.
So we'll be back here next week. Next Tuesday is going to be crap. Who's it going to be? I totally forgot.
Oh no! Let's look. Who wants to look online?
I'm going quickly. Hang on. Oh! Kenneth, Leonard, and Martin Robert.
I was just about to pull you up on Facebook. Okay.
Kenneth and Martin, and then after that, who we got?
You said you were on the next, not
and
this
then
week.
Richard. Next. No, then you're on the following. Brian, did I mess that up?
You got it. I'm on the 4th.
Yeah,
I'm on the 4th.
May the 4th.
You're on May the 4th? Oh, I'll be there.
No, we're trying to think of a Star Wars thing to do, a special Star Wars episode of The Perspective, but I don't know. Maybe investigate the Force.
I don't know, but make it about aliens and make it about the Force. Yeah, some sort of psychic or telekinesis. Yeah.
Are psychic abilities possible or telekinetic abilities?
Psionics, yeah.
Dude, I still wish I had that, but that'd be so cool. Just be able to be boom and shoot something.
I used to sit when I was a little kid and try to see if I can move stuff. I'm like, if I just right,
breaking out in a sweat, not knowing.
Gotta grip my teeth hard enough.
Yeah.
See, I use science. I'm like, hey kids, can you give me my drink? And they're like, oh, okay. And they hand it to me. I'm like, see, I just use my brain to move that cup.
You're quick. Every Thursday, I have a show with Hannah Vaughn called The Pickup Line, where we tackle dating, relationships, and sex. And every Sunday with Jenna Belk. Sorry, my brain's not processing information right now. YouTube.com/The Ethan and Jenna Show. And then Monday, I'm super, super, super excited. New show with Vila Bianca hosting. Yes. And our first two guests are going to be Kenneth Leonard and Shannon Q. And the format may sound familiar. They will be debating 3 topics while eating progressively hotter wings. So it's going to be so much fun.
Okay, so my question is, how do you get through 3 topics? I get debating a topic, but do they switch after every 2 hot wings, or how does that work?
We're still figuring that out. I just realized
tune in Monday and see what he figures out.
We need to figure out is it 2 per topic and how long we going? Yeah. Gonna have to work on that.
Yeah, you're so welcome for that. I don't charge.
I'm messaging B to get that figured out. Yeah, so it's gonna be fun, and I accidentally turned my mic way louder, so I have to stand back. But anyways, that's all I have. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Brian.
Anytime. It was
As
so fun.
always, their links are going to be in the description. And I hope everyone has a safe and wonderful week.
Yes, definitely. Bye, everybody.
All right, we are backstage with the perspective with Laura and Brian and myself. And I wish you could hear them right now, and you can't. And the only reason I'm recording this is because I completely forgot to do a help me out here. End credits scene. Dude, my brain's not working right now. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back to the perspective next week. Oh, and sorry, this just came in. Thank you, Godless Blessings, for the $2 super chat. It's very nice of you. Oh my God. I can't believe I forgot this too. My brain's all over the place tonight. Let me thank my patrons. Cindy PLAZA, Kenneth, Leonard, Kathy Letto, JumpandShoot, Oz, Secular Rarity, Chianti and Fava Beans, Philip Leitch, Kaitlyn Beyond, Toast, Richard Gilliver. Thank you, all of you. I appreciate your patronage and have a wonderful night. Crap. Hang on. I'm going to get this.